Ever been it's treated so badly.
Love him or hate him or anything else, Donald Trump is very good at communications. A lot of people on the left don't want to admit this. They don't need to admit it, but they need to study it if they want to defeat it, because they're not defeating it at all right now. They're getting rolled, they're getting beat on communications as usual, and there seems to be no analysis or no attempt to figure out how you counter Donald Trump's messaging. I'm just going to do three things here. They're so obvious that it's not even funny, but let's talk about it. Number one, he floods the zone. It's what Steve Bannon would say you have to do. Oh, you just throw all this information out here. The media will never be able to keep up. That's clear. Okay. Donald Trump floods his own better than anybody. He throws a bunch of stuff out. He throws so much information out. He keeps he keeps the media's attention on him at all times. The media can't keep up with it. The public can't keep up with it. And who knows what's going on. But the way that you have to counter that is you have to respond. You actually do have to respond to a lot of the bigger things. You have to triage that response. You have to figure out what's important, but you have to respond. What the Democrats are doing this week, the first week of his second term, is absolutely nothing. You're seeing very little response from the Democratic Party, and that is like, it's kind of like the same big mistake they made during the campaign when the Trump campaign ran a trans ad and the Harris campaign didn't even respond to it. And of course, they got beat on that because, of course, if you don't respond, you're losing by default. That should be obvious. Okay. The second thing is Trump will say anything.
They were treated like the worst criminals in history.
Absolutely anything. He just pardoned 1,500 people. 1,500 people at one time. Hundreds of whom were in there for assaulting a law enforcement officer. That's a major crime, to say the least. And they're in jail, and he has mastered the fine art of saying anything. A lot of this is the inability of the media to counter what he's saying. But then again, the media is so partisan to the left and the right now that that's really not the problem. The actual problem is that the so-called loyal opposition, once again, isn't saying anything. So, of course, you get beat when you don't say anything or when you say it in a way that's not effective in our current communications age, which that is a huge problem for the Democratic Party. It's still doing things like it's the 1990s and the early 2000s. And the fact of the matter is, you got to be all over the place in terms of social media. I thought it was problematic that they did not promote two younger members who have big media platforms. And that was a big mistake.
Election was rigged and they were protesting the vote.
The third thing that Trump does that is a win for him with regard to communication strategy is repetition. It's so obvious. Not only does he repeat the same things over and over again, he has people in his party, the Republican Party, repeating the same things over and over again. It doesn't matter if they're true or not. They just keep repeating the same thing over and over again.
As long as peaceful protests and people who engage in that should never be punished.
Protesting the vote because they knew the election was rigged and they were protesting the vote.
They accept a certain reality. They repeat it. They don't care if you don't like that, you don't agree, whatever. They just keep repeating things over and over again. The things that they can't answer, like, why did you pardon people who assaulted police officers? They just ignore that and bring something else up. And it really depends on the individual reporter whether or not that individual reporter is going to challenge that notion. But in this Hannity interview, you see the three major forms of Trump's communication: flooding the zone, saying anything, and then repeating things over and over, regardless of how untrue they may be. This is Lauren Burke. This is craziness that the Democratic Party cannot get their act together when it comes to messaging. I've been in the media and politics for over 20 years. Yes, I'm shilling the book, The 48 Laws of Power, because a lot of what goes on, not only with Trump, but just in general in our politics, is covered in that book. And the historic reference in the book is quite good. It really is The Art of War. It's really the Americanized version of The Art of War, but it's a little bit more extensive in some ways than The Art of War. At any rate, the Democrats need to get their act together. I get that. Communications is complicated, but there are certain things that are going on that they're allowing to go on that they shouldn't be allowing to go on, that have some very obvious fixes, and they're just choosing not to fix them. I'll be back soon.